We'll hear how to think like in the Middle East, how we can assure our existence and security. Good day to everyone. Because I came to Israel, made Aliyah at the age of 23. I was born in 1980 and I grew up in Iran and was educated in the Islamic Revolution. So I wanted to start with the words of Khamenei, the current leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. What did he say a few days ago? He said, an attack on Judea and Samaria, that is what will bring Israel to its knees. There has been significant progress. He's right about the first part. They're aware of the distance between Judea and Samaria to Kfar Saba, Herzliya, Tel Aviv, and so on. They are also aware of the fact that the story is not Gaza versus Kfar Aza, but the Arabs of Judea and Samaria, that if they enter the borders of the state of Israel, they will bring Herzliya, Kfar Saba, and Tel Aviv to their knees. And so the first part shows how important annexation is, or sovereignty. And in the second part, he says that a significant progress in meeting their goals has been made. And he's right about that. When the Iranians entered Syria together with the Russians to protect the Ba'ath Party and Assad, after they brought ISIS to its knees, the Russians met with Assad and said, how are you going to pay us back? And the Russians gave them, the Syrians gave the Russians the right to use their ports to a certain extent and phosphates. And the Iranian regime said to them, we don't need your money, but in return, we want the Syrian Ministry of Education. In other words, the material that will be written and studied in Syrian schools will be written by the Iranian regime. Ultimately, that means that in 15 years, we will see Syrian youth that are pro-Iranians. And they are doing this very patiently among the Jews of Judea and Samaria as well. And that's why in the next for the past 20 years, they have postponed the elections in Judea and Samaria because Hamas would take power, because they are filtering in Islamist teachings as much as possible in many different ways. And now we have not Arabs of Judea and Samaria, but more Hamasniks. And he continues, Khomeini says, the state of Israel has lost the initiative and is only responding to events. He's right. Since we don't want to draw the conclusions and we're not willing to read the covenant of Hamas and of the PLO, and we in the state of Israel are not willing to take into account the operating orders of these people known as the Arabs of Judea and Samaria and Gaza, we have lost the initiative. If we acquire a computer, it doesn't matter how many payments it takes us or what model or color we have. When you bring the computer home and you have operating instructions in that box, in that computer, and we have to use the computer according to its operating instructions. The operating instructions of Gaza and Judea and Samaria, of Hamas and Fatah, are their covenants. And their covenants at the very, very end don't want us here. Their operating instructions say that they don't want 25 kilometers of fishing rights. So all the discussions of the Shabak and the Mossad and the government and the cabinet, they're not relevant because their operating instructions, they don't want fishing rights. They don't want Qatari money, and they don't want work, and they don't want to flourish, and they don't want to become Singapore. Their operating instructions say very simply they don't want us here anywhere. That's why we lost the initiative. We are just being drawn by our vacuous secular worldview that you can buy peace and quiet, but they don't want to sell us peace and quiet. Khamenei continues in his remarks, and he says the rising force of resistant movements in the West Bank, that is Judea and Samaria, that is what will bring the Zionist enemy to their knees. And they must continue patiently because Judea and Samaria is the soft spot of the state of Israel. We can learn from Khamenei's words the entire Zionist strategy, of course, from the other way around, what we need to do. I can compare this to the Passover Haggadah. In the last part of the Haggadah, it says, next year in Jerusalem, the built Jerusalem. In that statement, there are two main characteristics which, with all the differences, appear in the covenant of Hamas and Fatah. And it's not a coincidence because they're all based on a national religious worldview. Patience and justice, belief in the justice in the called. We have the patience, the patience of the people that lived under Babylonians and the Persians and the Nazis and the Germans and all the others and the Romans. Next year in the built Jerusalem, a secular, westernized liberal, if their rent goes up, they move to Berlin, London, Los Angeles, Europe. 1,500 years of the perception of Jewish nationalism, the last part of the Passover Haggadah has never changed that last line. It's always Jerusalem. That is the justice in the cause. That is the first source, and it must remain that way in their eyes and in the eyes of their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to continue this narrative for 1,500 years so that Eliyau Yosian, a new immigrant, will come to Israel. There is 1,500 years of Jewish nationalism, patience, and a belief in the justice of the cause that led me to this point. And that is why Jewish nationalism is crucial. And with all differences, that's exactly what appears in the covenant of Hamas and Fatah, in their narrative against us. That's why it's so important to be patient and to maintain the faith and the justice of the course, to maintain these two main pillars of Jewish nationalism. The same story, the Mapam party, who were secular but not liberal, they were nationalists, they actualized it in Herzl's memoirs and in Jabotinsky and in Ben-Gurion and in the Declaration of Independence. More than 20 times it says a Jewish state and the national state of the Jewish people. They actualized the last statement in the Passover Haggadah. In order to actualize that, the people of Mapam had a logo in the name of settlement and security. They had two words, those were their holiest ideas, security and settlement. But settlement and security, in the eyes of westernized secular liberals, that has become racist. When we talk about Jewish settlement, according to the Western liberalized seculars, that is bigotry or racism. That settlement, which was a central event, that has been distorted, and now it's being called the settlements. The true meaning of that is the inheritance of our forefathers. Now they make it sound like stolen land. Once they called them mityashvim, and now they're called mitnachalim, settlers. And we talked about settlement and security. In our military world, security means geopolitical depth, controlling territory. As much, the further, the more Yoske and Rotem and Adi and so on will be on the land, Ahmed will be far away. The more we withdraw, Muhammad will move forward. It's a zero-sum game. In this zero-sum game in the Muslim world is called Dar el-Harb, the land of the enemy, the land of war. And it's a zero-sum game. Any moment, any given moment we stand here, this is called the land of the enemy. And in their writings, that brings them to the operating orders in the covenant of Hamas and Fatah, and they must destroy us. And that's why the secular but nationalist Mapai people understood the situation, that out of Jewish settlement we would achieve geopolitical depth, and that would achieve security, maximum security. I sat here and I heard some of the questions. What is the solution? There is no solution. That's the truth. There won't be a solution in 10 years' time either. We're raising our children on a slogan that with God's help, there is a solution. There is no solution. There must be patience and belief in the justice of the cause in favor of Jewish settlement as much as possible. The more Jews live on the territory, in the area, the more that we can make the area Jewish, the force of terror will decrease. We can see that in Judea and Samaria, there are far fewer terrorist activities than in the Tel Aviv area. According to the logic of a suicide bomber, they should be blowing themselves up among the settlers, not here, not in Tel Aviv, because their cognitive awareness, their ability to arm themselves, their security intuition is much better than in Tel Aviv, than in Netanya and in entertainment sites, because their nationalist approach is much sharper. It's much harder to conduct a terrorist attack against them. They're more aware. Also, the matter of annexation and deportation. How can we be victorious? We can't do it according to Western approaches. If we kill Muslims according to their approach, they'll go to heaven. They think that they're going to have 72 virgins waiting for them. You cannot defeat that kind of philosophy in Western terms. But what can you do? They are fighting all their wars and all their terror attacks with one goal, according to their operating instructions, so that we won't be here anymore. The punishment is to take land from them. They don't want us here. They don't want us on this land. So victory means to take the land from them. The punishment is that Muhammad will not be able to tie his donkey to the olive tree. Why? Because Yoskele and Shifrela with a kippah and tzitzit and a skirt will be running around and playing between the mikveh and the synagogue. That's the punishment. That's why, further to what Khamenei said, annexation of Area C is crucial. Annexation of the northern part of Gaza is crucial. I'm not saying all of it. I'm not saying a little. I'm patient, just like the Passover Haggadah, and I have lots of patience. Whatever we can get, whatever we can do, we will do. We will annex as much as we can now. And whatever we can't do now, just like our previous generation said, next year in Jerusalem for 1,500 years, we will pass this down to our children and grandchildren. So they will annex more and more and more. The second part of the victory is deportation, to drive them out. It is not a bad word. A few months ago, Azerbaijanis were fighting against Armenia. Azerbaijan was funded by the United States. They were armed by the United States. They are allies of the United States. And nevertheless, 100,000 Armenians were expelled, and the Americans did not do anything about it, and they remained their allies. And I'll take it even further. Pakistan is a Salafi state, a Sunni state, and has nuclear power with a military dictatorship, and it is an ally of the United States. They don't force their values on Pakistan. Here's another example. Egypt is a Sunni state. 40% of the Egyptians are Salafists, Muslim Brotherhood. It is a military dictatorship. The Americans are not forcing their values upon them, and they are also allies of the United States. Here's another example. Turkey, a Muslim Brotherhood state run by Erdogan. They are members of NATO, and they are allies of the United States, and the Americans haven't forced their values upon them. And so expulsion is possible. You can call it an encouragement. You can call it by force. I don't care how you wrap it up. What's more important is the essence of expulsion. We have to do maximum whenever possible. Today, on the basis of our formula, well, let's do as much as we can today, and based on the formula of the Passover Haggadah next year in a built Jerusalem, we will teach our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren to take up where we left off and expel as many as possible. To conclude, we are in the Middle East. And in the Middle East, the language is theology, religion, and nationality. Religion and nationalism are based on theology. If I give 100 shekels to a capitalist or a socialist, there's only one fact that's shared. There's 100 shekels, but they'll use the money differently because they have a different philosophy. There are 70 faces to the Torah, but there is one fact, that there is a Torah, but there are 70 different interpretations. And so a military security approach is based on philosophy and interpretation. We must punish the enemy based on the theological approach of the Middle East, to fight the enemy based on the Middle Eastern approach. That's the main reason that in the first 30 years of the existence of the State of Israel, the founders of the State of Israel, those dear departed Mapai people and the people of Etzel and Palmach, succeeded in defeating the enemy. Since we have become ill with the disease of Westernism, in the past 30 years, we are unable to be victorious. We just moved from one ceasefire to another, from one round of fighting to another, despite the fact that our situation is far better today than in the first 30 years of the State of Israel. We are an economic superpower, one of the top 10 countries in economic terms. We are a regional military superpower, a cyber superpower, one of the top 10 countries in terms of intelligence. But despite all this, we have not been able to defeat Lebanon or Syria or Gaza or Judea and Samaria in the past 30 years. What's missing? The spirit. Jewish nationalism. I would like to wish us all and the state of Israel victory and security, and with God's help, based on the spirit of Jewish nationalism, we will defeat our enemies.